This is Do It For a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance. What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It For a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now. So I have Scott Kuner here, very special guest today on Do It For a Living. Scott Kuner is the owner of Emtron Australia, and he's here to tell his entrepreneurial story. Now, Scott, like most tuners and shop owners, doesn't think of himself as an entrepreneur, but in the first 5 minutes of discussion, he already had told me of 3 businesses that he owns. So because of his experience with engine management setups at his performance shop, Insight Motorsports, Scott recognized the need for a high-end standalone ECU with all of its features unlocked up front, and he stepped up to fill that need. So Scott, thanks for joining me on Do It For a Living. You know, I'm really looking forward to this one, man. I'm pumped.
Thanks, Reed. Same here. I've been waiting a week for this.
So tell us a little bit about Emtron and your background.
Well, Emtron's obviously relatively new in terms of a company that's been introduced, and Emtron, the company's been around for 5 years now. Most of that time has been development. My life, historically, I got into cars pretty much since I was born. My family's a car family. We weren't a motorsport family, but I always enjoyed motorsport. And my life basically was all about electronics, cars, engines, anything that sort of moved. It was mechanical, I wanted to know about it.
Right. So you started tinkering with stuff at a pretty young age?
Yeah, I actually laugh talking about this. I actually found a slot car set that I had when I was probably about 8 years old, which would have been sometime in the 80s, and I'd actually managed to spray paint, this slot car, modify it, and I looked at it, I thought, well, that's probably the first car I actually really modified.
So you're an electrical and engineer by background?
Yes, that was my first port of call after school, and I got into an engineering company, electronics company, which specialised in design of currency handling equipment, and we made sort of high-end coin counting, note counting machines. We actually were involved in the development of ATM machines and so forth, and I was sort of lucky enough to get a position there, and I actually had an engineer there that I worked with very closely, and he sort of showed me the ropes a lot. Like, I learned probably more than I ever did at any school off this one guy, and I still use some of the knowledge today in the motorsport field, just based on what I learned back then.
So you said you learned maybe even more having some hands-on experience that you did in school?
Yeah, I think I believe school's important. I think that a formal learning background, I think it's important. It's not necessarily a must, but I think it's important that you can get the good theory, a good base. What we're dealing with is a lot of maths involved, physics and so forth, and there's a lot of successful people that don't even know how to use a calculator in this industry. But for me, I find that getting that core background is important for at least what I'm trying to achieve in my life. But getting sort of involved with someone who had a lot of experience, and the guy that I'm talking about, he was like 50 at the time, and I was like 18, 19 and 20, and the stuff that he was doing to me was just mind-blowing, and it was probably the pinnacle of analog electronics in its day, sort of in the 90s, and I was blown away by that, and I used to just think about how could I apply this to a car? Like, this is, how could I apply such, control systems that we were working with currency handling equipment? It's almost seamless. It's uncanny the parallels you could draw with EFI, engine management, and currency handling equipment. People think I'm crazy when I speak about it, but I mean, that's where I got a lot of my from.
I want to talk to you about how you went from currency handling hardware to owning a tuning shop and then to developing an ECU. But first, you just mentioned something that you're trying to achieve in your life. So expand upon that a little bit. What are you trying to achieve in your life?
Well, to me, I mean, businesses are, they're good to start and run and make money and all that sort of thing. But to me, I never, ever thought about that. I always wanted to have enough money to go racing and build cars and do that sort of thing. But to me, my pure goal in life is about getting as much knowledge as I can. I like knowing how things work. I like doing interesting things and really pushing the boundaries of technology, I guess. And what I mean by that is I would like to sometimes make something that's not complicated and turn it into something extremely complicated just out of my own personal interest. So I just have a love of technology, I guess.
Fair enough. Tell us a little bit about the technology that you're working with on a daily basis. Well,
with a lot of my business now Emtron's very heavily involved in, obviously we're developing engine management systems that are goal purely towards motorsport, primarily towards motorsport. So I like the idea of developing functions that we can use certainly under control environments where if you have possibly a control race car where you're limited with sensors and things like that, and try to maybe make the car do something or create maybe crazy traction control models that don't rely on wheel speed sensors and things like that. And, sometimes you trip over yourself certainly working on these ideas, but to me it's about just trying to make things work in certain ways that they weren't designed to work in the first place. So that's a lot of what I like to do. I think having businesses and having 3 businesses, a lot of your time is not spent doing that. So it's harder to, spend the time doing the things you just love to do when you've got all these businesses and, you're putting out fires and you're just trying to make the thing roll.
So it sounds like you have what I call a big, hairy, audacious goal here to make things work maybe on a level that they're not working elsewhere. Basically, just to kind of push the boundaries is what is firing you up. But what kind of monetary resources do you need to pull these things off? Do you ever run into a situation where you have a limitation where, look, you've got this grandiose idea, but you can't pull it off?
100%. I have a motorsport business which was reasonably successful, and before I started Emtron, it was in a position where I had houses, I had properties, I had money, which I didn't really need to. I was in a position where I almost didn't need to work, but I would work because that's what I do. I love it, and I basically threw all that away and started this business. And let's go and make ECUs and go crazy and blow the family's life savings. But I guess that where was I at again anyway? What was I thinking?
How do you make that sell? When you said, to blow the family's investment or, everything that you got, like you're going to put all your eggs into one basket because you're going to make it work. But I mean, how do you make that sell? Are you losing sleep at night?
No, I have, but I mean, on a daily basis, I'm not, and certainly not now. I'm in a comfortable position in my mind where I'm at. But I mean, my wife knows that I've got a massive drive to do things. I want to, I always had this dream of doing this ECU thing. It was just something, even since before I had a motorsport business, I always wanted to, create some device for a car and that we could use and something high tech. And she knew that if it was like, basically she had to sign off on it because we're half, we're 50-50 with everything in life, and she came into the relationship with well backed herself. So she was in mortgage background, and her boss sort of told her when she was 18, you got to buy a house, you got to get into property. So she was reasonably well off before she met me, and so together we formed a good team. But she had to sign off. And she knew that she probably wouldn't live with me if I didn't do this. So if I look back now at the amount of work that was put into it, the amount of money, the amount of risk, and now I've got 2 children, and I mean, I risked houses, I risked everything with the idea that, I could end up with nothing. And I probably would say that maybe I wouldn't wouldn't have made that decision. But it's a good thing that I didn't know that. I just pushed and pushed and pushed over these number of years until we made something happen. So, you know, I would probably say that I wouldn't do it if I knew what was involved in doing it, but I'm very, very glad that I did it. And my wife is too, because she wouldn't live with me and I wouldn't have known. I would have always been living in wonder whether I should have done it.
What if?
What if, yeah. So if I make a decision I want to do something, I'm going to do it. Now, whether I succeed, fail, whatever, it's like there's no way that I can get that out of my mind. But yeah, sure, I lost sleep. You know, there was times where, and like where the conversation started was that, you know, in terms of resources and, you know, wanting to do things and how do you draw the monetary, you know, how do you draw the money to be able to do these functions and ideas and projects, it's difficult because I have a list and I go through and like I use some, you know, spreadsheets quite often and I'll just sit there and I'll write functions or ideas or project ideas, and I've got enough projects to keep me going for the next 50 years of ideas, but I don't have, you know, obviously the financial and the technical backing, like enough resources. It's, you know, it's quite expensive if you want to put an engineering team on to
right.
do all these projects. So yeah, I've got all these ideas and I've just got to have to wait. So, yeah, like my wife.
That's the thing that you really lose sleep over, right? The thing that you really lose sleep over is all the things that you want to do, but you can't go and accomplish.
Yeah, and now we're getting these dealers that are coming on board that are really enjoying. They're feeling the, you know, I guess the passion and you know, this push of, you know, where I want to go with this. And they're like, oh, well, what about lambda modules and what about these, you know, special knock modules and you know, this and that and all these crazy, you know, power distribution blocks. When are you doing a dash? And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, okay. I mean, it's, you know, that's hundreds of thousands of dollars, possibly millions of dollars of development that we need to put into it. That I'm just going to have to be patient. And like my wife said, you just got to be happy with having this thing now. You know, this ACU thing you can sell. So,
but there's always that other horizon.
I'm never happy. I feel like I say I'm going to right. Once we get this, you know, I'm going to be happy, and then we can settle down and start, you know, selling some products and we'll just sort of sit back. But as soon as that happens, like, oh, well, we've got to make this now. Like, it's never ending. I'm never, ever satisfied. Ever since I was a kid, like my parents said, you're just never happy. You get a mountain bike and now you want a race bike and then you want a, you know, a motorbike and then you want a car. I'm just never satisfied.
I feel like I'm looking in the mirror right now. I feel like I'm talking to myself. Yeah. Incredible the things that you're saying. I'm fired up right now. So, let me ask you something. Look, why not use someone else's ECU?
Why not use some other ECU? Well, I have used probably every ECU known to man that can be used in a car and enjoyed most times. And the problem I find personally for myself is that I'm creative in my mind and I want to do things. So if I want the ECU to do a certain thing, I tend to find myself always creating workarounds. You know, turning functions into functions they're not designed to be, or trying to, like for example, I might try to hijack a drive-by-wire function and try to steal the PID routine out of that to create some other control function that's got nothing to do with the drive-by-wire, and sort of varying success. You know, I was able to do that, and sometimes it worked really well in motorsport under certain environments. But for me, having my own ECU company, that we don't have that problem anymore. So I can make some crazy concept or function that I can apply because I can just do it if I want to. Even now, I have this company that does all this ECU stuff, and you've got a list of dealers who are, you know, wanting, you know, a certain list of functionality, you know, functions that they need. And obviously we've got to concentrate on making sure that at least the day-to-day stuff and trigger patterns, for example, for different engines are are accounted for. So they're the boring sort of tasks.
The monotonous stuff.
Yeah, it has to be done. I mean, if a dealer wants an ECU for a particular project and he says, look, I've got this trigger wheel and it's missing this amount of teeth and so forth, and I want to, I've got this variable cam and it does this and that, we've got to make a trigger pattern, because if we don't, then we don't have a product to supply to these people. So I mean, the company is not designed, and it never was designed to compete with some of the other higher end ECU companies out there. But what I think our strength is that we're small and we are, we're much more flexible in terms of, creating, if a dealer has a function idea that seems good and could be useful, we'll go ahead and write it. And large ECU companies just really aren't in a position to be able to do that, because there's, they've got a structure that's in place, for better for worse, that generates they generate a schedule of how their functions are rolled out, whereas we can sort of just do it. I mean,
and is that something? Are you the one that the buck stops with? Do you get to make that decision?
Yes. Well, I think that, but ultimately it's the dealers, really. I mean, I have this list of functions that I want done. I have, we've got software engineers that I work with that would like certain things done with the software, and I would say that I'm a very, very average programmer at best. And I guess a lot of my electronics knowledge is a little bit, I guess it's a bit old-fashioned by today's standards now. So you become more reliant on engineers and contract companies to write certain code for you. But, I've got all these ideas and things that I want to do, and then you do find yourself, being tied down doing, things that are important to the dealers that need to be done. And I've got to make sure that as a company owner that we're satisfying. They're the guys buying the stuff. They're the guys using it. So I might have some crazy harebrained, idea that I want to implement, some crazy boost control function on some race car. And but ultimately, we've got to step aside and say, well, no, the dealer would like to have, some sort of a simple, lambda tuning, auto tuning feature or something like that. So we've actually got to try to make sure we appease the dealers. It's definitely very important to make sure they're happy. So we're doing our best to do that.
Right. So, Scott, tell us a little bit about how long it took you to take this idea from concept and into product. Tell us both in months and in hours. Was it a 4-hour-a-day kind of on the side thing while you were doing other things, or did you dive in head first and it was a 12 hours a day and you got it out in 6 months? Well, tell us about that concept to product timeline.
Well, this project now, so we've been selling product for 12 months now. We released it at SEMA in 2013. And we've been selling product for, I guess, 12 to maybe 18 months now. And we started the project, I think it was 2010. And when we did that, I was working my normal business hours, doing what I was doing. And at, say, 6 o'clock at night, I would go home and stay up till 1, 2 in the morning every day, 7 days a week. We would do that. And I also have engineers which we would pay, extraordinary amounts of money to work on certain aspects of the design of the ECU, and companies in which it was like it was just like a money pit. We were shoveling money into these projects, and here I'm up at 1, 2 in the morning every day working on it. And it took us at least 3 to 5 years, to really get it done flat out, full stick, with contract programmers working on software, contract programmers working on different chips. So we have FPGA on board, which we have a company that we have a couple of companies which have worked with us on the programming of that. That chip alone was like a 6-month project, which it was just
expand a bit on the chip.
So basically, the FPGA, it is it's common in generally high-end ECUs. So it allows you to almost do after the fact. So say you have some hardware which is made, right? You can't change the way the hardware functions once you've produced it physically. But if you say you want some sort of a special control, or you can almost put a microprocessor inside of this, so you can just program it in. Like it's like software. So you would just put this, or firmware, well, you would write code and you would put it in. You'd have yourself a microprocessor, and it could do some maths, or it can do all sorts of things. We've got an Ethernet on board inside of this FPGA. So basically, it's our communication is done by Ethernet, and it goes through this FPGA. We also peak and hold injection control. I would probably say ours is one of the more advanced, if not the most advanced, peak and hold control systems around, and it's programmed all through the FPGA. So we would spend weeks, months writing the specification to give this company to write this code to drive the injector in a fashion we want it driven, and they would write it, and then obviously we'd get it back from them, and it wouldn't work, and then we'd give it back to them again, and it wouldn't work exactly how we wanted, and this would be sort of backwards and forwards. So,
for how long does that go? I mean, you're shoveling money into this thing. You said 3 to 5 years full out, and maybe 6 months on the FPGA chip, but you're shoveling money into this thing, and then it comes back and it doesn't work right. So then you got to go back into it again. And I mean, when does that ever end? And at what point do you get so frustrated that you're pulling your hair out?
I'd say many times. The biggest thing for me, as a big wake-up call, is I found that in engineering companies that it definitely seems that they would work on an hourly rate, and sometimes we did get a quote on it. So if we wrote a specification, very, very stringent specification, if we ever bent that specification, always is, oh, what about this? We should have done that. So can you change it to do this? Oh, that wasn't in the spec. So all of a sudden, the money machine starts rolling again, and they would send it back and it wouldn't work to your specification. A lot of times, things would be functional, but it wasn't to the spec. And they would say, oh, well, you didn't clarify enough in the spec. So it was sort of, I find it very difficult dealing with this engineering company, spending so much money, with someone to get a particular task done, and it's like you never seem to ever get what you want. So from what I'm learning is the more we do in-house, the better. I
was just going to say, at what point do you bring that stuff in-house? But it's hard to justify a salary, but I mean, when you're paying triple or quadruple the rate to pay a consulting service for their services, it at some point, you're going to have to bring that in-house, but that's a tough one.
Yeah, but I guess on the flip side, we've been lucky because I have a couple of programmer friends of mine who don't really know much about motorsports or engine management or any of that, but very good programming side of things, and they sort of they have their own full-time jobs and they work for us, so they will do hours and I wouldn't say 7 days a week, but certainly a few nights a week and every weekend, and they're trying to get ahead and they're enjoying the process of working with us, and the cost, their contract prices are significantly less than some of these larger companies who pretty much they're on hundreds of dollars an hour, and the clock does not stop, and you're paying. We're paying project management fees, and they assign project managers where you're paying them unbelievable amounts of money just to oversee the project, and and more often than not, they're more useless than useful. Because you've got some middleman that you've got to deal with now. So now you're trying to get to a result, and you're trying to deal with the engineer and work with them, and then you've got some person in the middle, which is all processed. They're all processes, and it's all about how can they maximise the profitability, and they seem to drag on projects so they're never ending. So we always set a goal. We want it to do this, and this. We want this communication. We want this, and that. And they say, okay, no problems. And you never ever seem to get to the end. It's like, well, when are you going to deliver us, this code that's going to do what we want? And they always are looking at a way of generating more business within that. And
sure, because they're billing by the hour.
They don't care. They just want to keep on going. And what's frustrating is I get very angry with that. And now it's gotten us to the point where exactly what you said is that we start pulling things in. So we're doing as much as we can in-house now and not contracting work out for that reason. So ultimately they're going to lose long-term income. And I think that principle holds throughout the whole motorsport industry, where people trying to get as much money as they can out of one car build. We're just going to, we're going to make as much as we can out of this guy who's got a good budget, and they're not looking at the future. They just, future business. And
yeah, they don't want a relationship. They want the money right in front of their nose.
They want the money. I'll make it now and keep going, and they get very greedy, and they don't realise the long-term, benefits of doing well by your client, and just you just get a constant stream of income over the long term, which I think is much more stable, certainly for any.
I've really realized that in the last couple of years, and more specifically just in the last few months, that the relationship is so freaking important.
Yeah, it seems to be everything.
It's everything. I mean, it's the ability, like the relationships that you have with your friends that are good coders and being able to lean on them. It's the relationships that you have in the industry with your customers, right? It's because of those relationships that you're even able to build a product and have that product go somewhere.
Exactly.
Because it's only because of those relationships. Everything boils down to that stuff. I tried to justify, the number of events that we would go to in a year, and we would say, God, we're spending just thousands and thousands of dollars going to these events, and is it really just for fun? And if it is, that's fine, but we need to recognize that we're just doing this for fun. But at the end of the day, we would say, look, I go to these events, I'm able to rub elbows with all of my friends, and look, we have these relationships now, and now when we have a new product or when we have a problem that we need solved, we can call our friends that we've spent time with, and they know who we are, and we know who they are, and we have a relationship. And that relationship, it's really important.
I think so too, and just not from a business perspective, just from a personal point of view, it's just nice.
Exactly. It's who is on the other end. Real people. It's not just numbers. It's look, these are my friends.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
So, look, people complain about their circumstances and tell themselves all the reasons why they can't do something, and woe is me, and feeling sorry for themselves. But I want people to take away from this that you spent 3 to 5 years working full out until 1 a.m., 7 days a week. I mean, you're just driving your ass really hard. And I think that's the difference between people that achieve and make things happen and people that don't. And I really want to just bring that to light. Like, you're talking about it like it's no big deal, and there's not any regret or remorse in your voice saying, oh, man, it was so hard. I worked so hard. But, you're still here doing it. I love it.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, too, that, and probably the reason why is because if I didn't have the pressure of, making things happen, I still would have wanted to do it anyway. I would still be up 7 days a week, 1 in the morning, playing on the computer, trying to work out, certain things, and, playing with data logs and engine management ideas. It's really like it is a hobby as well outside of work. So I can't get my brain out of it. It's actually sometimes frustrating that that's all I think about. It's become like a disease of, wanting to learn and knowledge. But people complaining about, so-and-so's lucky, it's easy for you and all this. Like, I just got no time for that. It's like people get depressed or whatever. I mean, I know there's, depression is a serious problem, but people seem to get down on themselves and they expect the world is going to give them, something. And there's the only way to do it is you've got to go out and exactly do it. You've got to do it and push hard, and that's what I found myself. And I've found in certain circumstances with business where I haven't pushed and I haven't put that 100% effort in, and you just watch it just goes down. Like you got to push at it.
Yeah, you got to think big, or someone else is going to.
Yeah, 100%. But I think you have to love what you're doing, because I don't think anyone would like to work 7 days a week, 16-hour days, just barely sleeping, working, if it was just, doing something they didn't enjoy. I just don't think you could do that. I couldn't do that. So I think you have to enjoy it. There's certain aspects, there's times where I just don't enjoy things. I'm like, God, this is work and I have to do it. But everything has things every aspects of where you enjoy it, and then, where you don't enjoy it. But you have to do some tasks, just got to be done. You got to tick that box and just push through it. And then when you do that, that gives you time to go and spend on the things you like spending your time on with it.
I'm loving everything that you're saying right now. I think it's just hugely important. I'm a big fan already. Well, so let's get...
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go ahead. You're right.
Well, let's talk about some doubts and some bad experiences. Do you have a bad experience that you could share with us, a time that really had you flat on the floor ready to quit? Did you ever have an experience like that? Everybody's had really bad experiences. Can you think of one, and can you take us there and how you overcame it?
I can think of one. I'm sitting in it now. It's a some years ago, it might be 10 years ago, the business was going quite well, the performance shop and the currency handling business, and before Emtron time, and we needed to expand the factory. So I built a mezzanine floor, and I had an engineer. We drew it all out, and it was over spec, just like most things I like to do, massive I-beams and that sort of thing. And anyway, I decided that, we didn't need any council approval. It's my factory, I own this place, and I can do what I want. So anyway, I built this mezzanine, and then decided that probably a good idea to go and get council approval. So I put all the paperwork in, and they came out and inspected it, and they were impressed with structurally how good it was. And they said, yeah, everything all looks good. We've just got to go away and write the paperwork. And anyway, in the meantime, I didn't spend a lot of time following it up. I'm not good at sort of taking care of that side of things, and it's just not interesting to me. But anyway, I continued, building walls and carpeting, and we filled this back. And I would say by the end of it, I'd spent maybe $100,000, which to me was, a lot. Today it's still a lot of money to me, but back then it was like a huge amount of money. And I'd sort of saved up, and I didn't just get $100,000. Over time, I built this thing. Anyway, I got a letter in the mail a couple of months later, and it said, you have to demolish your mezzanine floor. It's not council approved, and all this, and I was devastated. Anyway, I called them and asked them to come out and see it, and they said, oh, yes, well, the problem is that you have too much floor space to car space ratio. Now, the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard of, but they set a size of how much floor space you could have, or what they considered office space, and you needed to have a certain amount of car spaces. Now, the whole point of that was that, if you had an office full of workers, they're going to take up car spaces, being there. But for me, the floor was made so we could have a more contained electronics area, a cleaner area where we can do repairs on PCBs and that sort of thing. And it was nothing about having more office space. Well, anyway, from that point, I would say that was where I had sleepless nights. I was definitely flat on the floor. I was extremely upset, and I felt like I was going to, they would have had to, I was going to chain myself to this mezzanine, because there was no way that this stinking local government was going to take my mezzanine floor off me. I mean, I just fought them. And they basically came back. I did like an appeal process, and they said, nah, you got to knock it down. They just couldn't. I was so pissed off, because when they came out, and the inspectors, they just had no concept. Well, this guy, he's working hard. He's trying to make a living for himself, and put staff. We're employing staff, and here they are. They just did not give a shit. All they cared about was their bureaucracy, and that you don't have enough car spaces assigned for this floor space that you have. So I ended up getting a solicitor, and I ended up spending half of what my mezzanine was worth on fighting them, and it all came down to a hearing, a court hearing. But it was an interesting court hearing, because it was held inside my mezzanine floor. So they had this system where you could have they had like a judge that came out, and we had some tables and chairs set up, and the local council and their engineering department came here, and there was me, and my dad was sort of sitting with me, and steam pouring out of our ears, and it was like a war. And this one guy who was, he had in his eyes, we're going to knock the floor down. He had something to prove, or whatever it was. Right,
logic is going to play no role.
There was nothing. I even said, look, I'll knock out the back room and we'll reduce the floor space. Can we do, come up with a compromise? No compromise, knock the whole thing down, And anyway, so we had this hearing, and the judge basically told this guy that you're an idiot. And he was sort of almost furious at this guy and the council, and because they had their own solicitor there. It's just the most ridiculous thing. Like, look what they got going on here. It's not like a sweatshop with 20 people in there producing something. They could see what it was actually used for, electronics and storage and so forth. So they had an agreement and said, look, are you happy with this, that this is going to be used as not office space? and you don't have to worry about your floor space ratio. It's storage space, and they said, yep, we're happy with that. And boom, it was like the stroke of a pen, biggest weight lifted off my shoulders. And I couldn't believe how easy it was in the end. I mean, it cost me $50,000 to fight them in legal expenses and all this rubbish, hearings. But at the end, it was like, that's ridiculous. Let him keep his factory alone. Leave him alone. And they basically said, leave this guy alone. And from then on, I guess I grew a lot of confidence. I figured if I can come back from that, there's no one's going to touch me now. Like, you're not going to stop me. And I've had that attitude before and since. But certainly it was very close to a point where I had enough of it.
Well, that's perfect. How do you deal with that devil on your shoulder telling you that things can't be done? You said you were losing sleep over it. They're telling you to tear this thing down. You're saying, look, that's not going to happen. We're going to war. How do you deal with the devil on your shoulder that tells you things can't be done?
Well, I guess what I did in those sleepless nights, they were all about money at the end of the day. Like, yeah, sure, we put a lot of work in building it, but, you knock a building down, you can build another one. I didn't see that as a problem. At the time, it was just I worked so hard to get this $100,000 to build this thing, and then they're going to make me knock it down. And but after I looked at it and said, look, I'm going to fight these guys, stuff them, I determined that the $100,000 only money. I don't really care about money. And I thought, I can make more. It's no problem there. I'll just keep working. Money to me is just a necessity to go and, be able to allow me to do things. I don't really sit there and count it, in the corner. I don't care less about it. So I figured, look, worst case scenario is I've done $100,000, but stuff these guys, I'm going to fight. I'm going to keep my mezzanine because I like it, and it's going to help me with my business and so forth. And stuff them. They're not taking my mezzanine. So it was very, very principle. It was all about the principle in the end. I mean, for the amount of money I spend to keep it, I could have almost knocked it down and done the approvals and half built it again. But
right.
But I just said, no, stuff you. You're not taking it. And even today, I still get really furious about hearing stories of certain things like that. People not allowed to put signs up. Councils they really annoy me. I think from that perspective, that it just feels like government is always against business, and certainly small business seems to cop the brunt of any bureaucracy. They're the easy target for governments, and I'm sort of not really happy with them ever.
I can totally respect that, and I agree with you 110%. It's definitely unnecessary when there's bureaucracy like that. That's, spend your time doing something more useful, right? There's plenty of things that need to be done in the world. Don't be knocking down my door fighting over stupid shit.
Yeah. 100%.
Right? We got enough things to do in the world. Let's go do something productive, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So let's talk about Emtron a little bit. It appears that you're targeting the higher end of motorsports and not the weekend warrior / do-it-yourselfer. First, tell us how you chose who your customer is, and then I want to talk about how much the price of the product impact its ability to sell. Well, are your customers price shopping?
I think for me, I only was ever interested in doing this if it was at a high end. Now, it didn't necessarily have to be high end in terms of some of what's available in Europe for ridiculous amounts of money, but I felt that there's definitely room to be able to produce a product that was high end and as you said in your intro, it's features are completely unlocked, so you get everything, you buy it, and you get the whole box and dies. And I felt that to me that was interesting. I think from a business point of view, it may not be the ultimate thing to do. I think it would have been much easier development-wise, to produce a cost-competitive product with some of that mid-range ECUs, where I could just directly, market against them, and I could have produced the product easily and possibly been very competitive to an extent with limited marketing power. But to me, I thought, well, there's some pretty high-end stuff out there, and there's some mid-range stuff, and there's a bit of a hole in the middle. And that's where I wanted to position it by price-wise.
So talk to me about you're in the middle. When you say high end, are you talking Magneti Marelli?
Magneti Marelli, Pectel, Bosch Motorsport, probably more likely.
Okay.
Sort of when I'm talking about sort of high end, when you're talking about mid-range ECUs, you're talking like what I would refer to in Australia as a $2,000 ECU, which is very powerful, can do a lot of things, but it's very, I guess you would say, it's not flexible in terms of what you could do from a user level. So you tick the boxes and it'll do what you want it to do, usually for most tasks, but it doesn't let you get too creative. And then you have systems such as the Motec M1, which to me is very impressive, and probably a lot up my alley personally, in terms of being able to write your own firmware and do things like that. But I felt that our market was not to provide a product where they could go down that path. We needed to provide a product that was sort of more flexible, more powerful, could do a lot more things than, say, maybe that mid-range ECU could do. And that's exactly where I wanted to place it in the marketplace.
So tell us about some features that your ECU can do that another competitive product can't do. Well,
we've got traction control, which is quite powerful. It uses advanced sort of PID routines and some interesting methods of feed-forward tables to generate cut and retard and certain things.
So how does it reduce engine power to control traction?
Well, the way the whole ECU works is it's very, very linkable in terms of if you want to use runtimes that are available, they're generally globally available. So if you could sort of cross-contaminate a function, I guess, if you will. So if you wanted to, you could offset boost based on some form of slip through your boost control function. So indirectly, you don't even need to rely on the traction control overall as a function. You can be pulling boost out, but you're also cutting. So the primary way to get your traction control done is usually by cut and retard, with the idea that, e-throttle is another method for improving traction, but the system needs to be very, very flexible and functional without things such as drive-by-wire. So
okay,
I think a lot of the functions also in the ECU, you could get a checkbox of almost any product on the market and say, oh yeah, it's got that, oh yeah, it's got that. But we tend to expand that. So I'm a big fan of 3D tables. Everything's got to be, 3D table this, compensate that, and not sort of just like for boost control, for example, you just have a boost setting and you set up the table and you might have a switch or something. I like to use, certainly when we're doing a lot of race car stuff, I'm involved with heavily with like time attack racing, which is sort of like drag racing for a circuit car. And, so we're spending a lot of time managing torque and managing the way, we've got these 1,000 horsepower, 4-cylinder things racing around with all this aero. And, you can't, with these tyres that are not, slick tyres or anything, so they're very hard to put all that power down that you have. So I like to manage torque through different means of driver inputs or chassis inputs. So when you do that, you need to have the ECU that's flexible enough to be able to accept those inputs and be able to apply a change or an offset or something like that to boost. And same as with your traction control, you need to have, I see that you need to have as many sort of inputs that you can have that can give the ECU the best chance of giving, ideal traction or whatever result you're trying to achieve. So we try to just make everything that most people tick boxes, we try to make it do it better or do more of that and more advanced.
First off, I want to expand upon check boxes. So what you're saying check boxes is, look, you have two comparable ECUs, and on paper, one says it has traction control and the other one says it has traction control. What you're saying is your traction control is more developed.
Yes, and exactly, like, it's easy to put a tick box of functions. So if you just say, I can do boost control, I can do closed loop lambda, I can do this, I can do that.
Right, but all closed loop lambda, all traction control is not created equal.
Exactly. I mean, even, we have what I guess a lot of your listeners would understand what a Z-axis or an additional axis is, and a lot of our functions have those available to be used. So you just have more flexibility with a function that can do a certain thing. So just because, like, at the end of the day, most ECUs, unless you're going into the realms of, writing your own functions and firmware and stuff, their job is to do very much the same thing. You need to fire injectors, you need to fire spark plugs, you need to turn things on and off. And it's easy to say, yeah, I can turn spark plugs on and off and I can turn injectors on and off, but how advanced, is it when it's doing that? Like, how much power does it have? How flexible is it? So I don't look at just tick boxes as being, yes, that ECU is capable because, the tick boxes are there and they say it can be done. And I'm very critical of ourselves as well. I mean, we revisit functions as well, where when you produce them, you think they're good and you use them, but after a while in the field, you find, it's not quite as flexible as I would have liked it to have been, and you have to revise it. You got to work on it. And dealers are good at that as well. Our dealer base, I would say 50% of the dealer base that we have, I either knew before or knew of, and had some form of personal friendship, relationship, or just a passing conversations that we knew each other and rub ideas. So they're very keen to be involved in, look, I did this and I did that on the dyno, what if it did something differently, or could you add this to it? And I'm like, that's a good idea. And they would send data logs and show me, and I'd say, yeah, that's a very good point. So, I think that most ECU companies are not really, pushing towards, that flexibility. They're generally trying to sell ECUs, and there's a pressure to do that.
Of course. And
especially when you become a large company, you've got to sell the numbers. You have to do it. So you've got to do what the market wants in terms of, it does this, it does that, and give a list of features that it has, and it makes it attractive for sales. Whereas to me, I'm not very good at that side of things, and to be honest, I'm not that interested in marketing our product to try to steal sales off other companies. To me, I've got a vision of what I want to do with the ECU, hardware-wise, technical-wise. I've got a really good group of dealers that are on board, and they're going to use our ECUs till the day they die on that basis. That we're friends. We would go out together and have a drink together or a dinner together and talk about things. And I like to think that my role is to support them as best as I can, and provide the product that's as powerful and suitable to their needs as best as they can, and my own needs, of course, as well. And not so much because it sells more. And that may be a weakness in the company in terms of its sales model. But it's a small company and it doesn't need to sell massive. We don't need to be shoveling ECUs out the door. I mean, if we were, it would give us more income to be able to probably go and make all those crazy, projects that I had that big list of. But ultimately, we don't have the pressure to sell massive quantities. And our customer base is I want to do motorsport. That's where I want to be. High-end motorsport, if possible, and even the casual, weekend racer. I'd like to get them to a level where they sort of are at a higher level and using our systems at a higher level. And I'm not really that interested in the street car customer for our product, and it probably isn't a smart business move in terms of overall sales potential. But it's very hard to get excited about something you're not excited about.
Yeah, and that's really impressive that you know that about yourself, because I think a lot of times people get romanced by the idea of making a bunch of sales, or they get pushed into an area and then they're balls deep in it and have to sell a bunch of product or whatever, and it's difficult to turn out a really, really good product if you're not very fired up about it. Yeah. You got to have the passion, or else it's going to come through in the creativity. You're just going to not get something about it. The X factor is just not going to be there. So, I'm sorry, give me one more thing. I really want to talk to you about, you said, there's so many things that you just talked about. How do you inform your customer that your tick box isn't the same as the other guy's tick box? That's a struggle for you.
Yeah, I do sort of regular, probably not as regular as they should be, but mail outs with some, to the dealers at a technical level. I don't sort of sell fluff of, we've made this new thing, it's so great, you need to sell 100 ECUs now. I once we write a function that I quite enjoy, I'll write a little technical article on how to configure, how to set it up, and some interesting uses for it. And the dealers that we have, a lot of them are at a high enough level that, they've been involved in motorsport and they've been using engine management systems for a long, long time, and they'll identify if they feel that that's a good function or not. And it's, I think once they use it in the way that it was sort of intended, a lot of the times they'll, wow, that's cool. I like that. And some of the dealers that are really ultra keen, they'll come back with another 10 things. Well, you should do this. You should add that to it. And well, because a lot of the times we create a function that's maybe 70% of what I would have loved to have been, on the basis that if you make it too complicated, and I'm guilty of that, is that if you make it too complicated, the general user is going to struggle, and it's actually worse than having a more simpler function. So I can understand where ECU companies create functions 100% more now than I could have before, that they create ECU functions not necessarily on the basis that that's all they were capable of doing. It was like, we have a market that we're goaling towards, we have a particular user level that we're working with, and we need to create the function that they can use, and it's going to work flawlessly to the level that they know, and a lot of stuff's going on in the background that they don't need to know about. To me, I like to know everything, and as a user, even at
So you used to look at that and say, oh man, those guys don't know what they're doing, or they could have developed that to a higher level.
Yeah, but like these guys, this is rubbish. Like, how do I suppose this is not counting for this, not counting for that? I can't do anything with it. But what I understand now, when it comes down to, well, okay, you go develop some function, and you make it so difficult that you need to be a space rocket engineer to work it out, and then it's not good. And I've even been guilty of it where we've done a function and I go to use it in testing, and it might be some time later that I work on it. Oh, geez, how did that work again? And you're going back to your notes trying to work it out, thinking, Christ, we're the ones that we made this thing, and
it's this difficult. It's not very user friendly.
It's probably too difficult. So I mean that's a common struggle when you are creating functions, because you can make them as advanced as you want, and I think any ECU company has enough engineering knowledge within them, at least to make very, very complex and powerful features. I think the added advantage that we have is that I've been involved in tuning thousands and thousands of cars over the years, and also used every single ECU you could possibly fathom. So you get a vibe of what's a good way to go about things, and what's maybe too complicated or not as easy. So it's we do have an advantage in that respect. I think that a lot of companies don't have people that are actually in the field tuning cars and using them and going to race meetings and doing that sort of thing.
Yeah. God, you know what, Scott? This was supposed to be originally 30-minute episodes, and it's because of talking to guys like you that these things consistently go to an hour, because I could talk about this for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I'm massively impressed with what you've done. To be honest, I don't think I've seen anything like this in terms of offering of a service to this business, to this industry, like in many years, probably since, companies such as ZFI University came out with, training people with tuning and teaching people how to tune. It's like it's a dead set service. I wish I had 10, 15 years ago would have and been able to have this resource.
Right. I mean, when you're coming up in your business, don't you want to? I would die to have heard from people like you, other people in the industry that are out there doing things, what their opinions are, how they view the industry, what they're doing. I mean, it's huge.
We all seem to have made the same mistakes, made the same good decisions, and we did it on our own sort of, radar. Like we didn't have, most of us probably didn't have someone to guide. Like my dad was not a business person at all, none. So, he's very, very supporting and still is. But I had to sort of come up with my own ideas for how this sort of, these businesses will play out. And I made so many mistakes, so I'm still making them today. But if I had a resource where I could, exactly such as yours, would have made life a lot easier, I think.
Well, I appreciate it, man. We're really trying to put something out there that means something to people.
Yeah, and this industry is very much contaminated with a lot of egos and all that sort of thing. So it's very hard to sort of see the light through the trees a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's true. So let me get just to a last few things here, so that we don't have to turn this into a 6-hour conversation. Maybe we'll have to do a 2-part and come back to it.
Yeah, more than happy.
Right on. Tell us about a game-changing product that you've seen in the last year. Tell me some products that I don't know about.
Well, I wouldn't know it being a branded product, but certainly 3D printers, to me, have just gone insane. And I look at them now and some of the rapid prototyping that's getting done, and it's become accessible. So I know they've been around for some time, but it's actually now there's a scenario where your local performance shop could quite easily purchase something and use it. I think that's a massive game changer. It's changed the way people think about doing a setup or a combination or designing some manifold for a race car. It's completely transformed. It's going to transform the industry for sure.
You could take an idea from solid model, existing only in digital format, and turn it into something that you could hold, touch, and bolt onto the car in 24 hours.
Yeah, I mean, my brother...
And I mean, not just billet shapes, but organic shapes, all kinds of things that you could otherwise only achieve through casting or forging.
Yeah, I mean, my brother, he's in forensics, and they use 3D printing to recreate certain things in crime scenes and stuff. And so I knew about this technology for some time, but it was way out of any sort of motorsport performance shop's reach. And he brought a working bearing home, rollers inside of it, printed on a 3D printer. I'm like, what the... It just blew my mind. I just couldn't believe that you could make something like that, with a printer. And to me, that's a game changer. I think on the electronics front, I think power distribution is the big game changer, certainly in motorsport. Yes. I think that if you're not running one of those of some description, various brands, I think you're just not in it. You are not racing in high-end motorsport if you don't have some form of power distribution. And, I remember coming up with a concept sort of 15 years ago of the solid-state relays, this electronic theory of, creating this board where you didn't have to have relays anymore, and everyone thought I was nuts. They're like, oh, so what, you're creating a complicated relay? I said, yeah. And they're like, that's pretty stupid. And then sure enough, everyone's come up with this idea. I feel like they stole the idea off me from the 90s. I mean, it was probably a good business idea at the time, but I couldn't see far forward enough to think that would be that good. But to me, that's a game changer.
I couldn't agree with you more. And so now, looking back, what ideas do you have right now with the resources that you have right now? The next time one of those things gets into your head, you need to get your ass going and get it done.
Yeah. I think the problem is at the moment, I've got so many projects that we need to do which are tick boxes. So creating maybe a dash or something and maybe creating a power distribution block of some description for our users. Certainly one of the projects would be, just the little modules that, the little modules that you need when you're building cars and you're buying off your electronics or your ECU company, and the ECU is only one part of it. It's a fraction of the cost of maybe what you would spend. So there's nothing specific that I can think of now that needs to be done that hasn't already been done, except, I do have some ideas, but that would revolve around power distribution. I kind of, thought the idea of, instead of having a central point for your power distribution, you have sections on the car where you're distributing power, and you have like a control unit like in the centre, or possibly the ECU could be part of that. So it's more localised, so your wiring's more localised, because a PDM, for example, is a great thing, but you still have to bring everything to that point. So at some stage, so if you had some localised points on the car, and you could build it like a building block, so you could build like maybe a 4-channel power distribution block, and you sort of stack them up. So, and
how would you communicate between the modules?
You would use some sort of probably CAN bus.
CAN network. Okay. Yeah.
But that would be, that's a little idea that I thought of. I also thought that, the idea in the future of engine management where the engine management, the ECU is just like a little box, and it doesn't really do anything. It might accept the triggers, and then you drive, you're driving, injector driver box, and you drive, you have some CAN bus input. So you create this modular ECU system, whereas we've gone the direction of, a box, put 120 pins on it and just go nuts. And that's the sort of the way we've gone. But yeah, it would be interesting to be able to just expand your ECU. So you could buy this module and say, well, I only want to connect a map sensor and a throttle position sensor. And then next week, I want to put these sensors. Well, you could buy this little block and you put it into the network. And
so engine management in modular form.
Yeah. So you just build it up over time. So as you want, as you need, as you require. So an interesting concept, but I think for me now, for a number of years, at least for the next handful of years, a lot of the projects that we'll be creating will be just trying to make sure that we create a product range that sort of appeases the general use that's required, with engine management now. That's we've got to catch up a little bit there. So we concentrate on making sure ours communicates with so many devices that are out there as best as possible. So it is flexible. My personal preference is dashes. I love, communicating with dashes and, transmitting and receiving crazy amounts of data between the two. And, that's sort of my personal love. So I think, but it will be some time before I get into some crazy ideas and get them out there as a product. But they will come, but, it'll be a few years away, I think.
Well, I'm going to be subscribed and watching.
Yeah, but at least we'll at least bring out products that are more classic that we need to have as our own branding. We need to have Lambda modules, Lambda to CAN type modules, and they're the sort of things that we're looking at releasing, over the course of the next 12 months.
Yeah. Scott, what software program are you using daily?
I'm looking at Google Docs now on my computer screen. That's a common thing I would use. We use our software, our website. We're producing a back end which allows us to sort of manage, the stock and that type of thing. So it's serial numbers and that. So we created our own back end.
For your website?
Yeah, it's basically inside of our website. So it allows us to, allow dealers, they order their products. So we do not sell to public at all, direct. It just doesn't happen. We only sell through dealers. So they log on and they get their product and they order it and it gets processed in the back end. And so we set up systems to allow us to manage that well. And it's work in progress, but I'd say one of my favourite software is Excel. I use Excel a lot. Word, Paint. Paint's, to me, I love Paint. I'm always copying, pasting photos or pictures or screenshots or something like that and drawing all over them. So they're common.
Fancy. Very fancy.
Software I use, yeah.
Excel seems to come up over and over and over again, so it just lends to the geekiness of our guests, We're constantly in Excel. Everything's Excel.
Yeah, for sure.
So how about a favorite shop tool? Can you tell me about something that I don't know about?
No. I'm almost too scared to say that. Well, I'd say my laptop, I would have to say, is my favourite tool. To me, the laptop is like, I take it everywhere. And I call that my tool because it just gets smashed every day. I've got like 30 icons on the bottom of the toolbar open at any one time with all different programs and software and, software packages that I'm working with the business or just for fun, or data logs that I've got open, trying to work out things. But, in terms of it, I'm almost afraid to say it, but I just got back from an interstate trip doing some tuning and meeting some...
Oh, you're beating around the bush. Let's hear it.
I brought my laptop and my Picoscope with me.
And your what?
My Picoscope.
Oh, Pico, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what everybody says.
So, it is a great tool. I just... If you don't own one, it's almost sacrilege not to own one of those things.
I'm telling you, recurring themes. Favorite tool, Dyno. Favorite software program, Excel. Favorite shop tool is Picoscope. These things are like recurring. Everybody says the same thing.
It's almost not a question anymore, really. Another tool that I do like, it's a new one that we got. It's a new Dymo label maker.
I love that. I love mine too. Twin turbo.
Yeah, we just want to put a label on everything. And we use it for motorsport wiring and stuff in house. But we're sticking labels on everything. It's just a really nice little tool.
I like it too.
Had to be different there somewhere along the lines.
So I feel like, yeah, that was a good one. Scott, I feel like you're going to tell me a good one on this one because I can already tell you're a creative thinking guy. You're really thinking outside of the box, and I appreciate that about you. Talk to me about what the future of automotive performance is.
That's an interesting one.
That's a whole conversation in itself, but what do you got?
I think it's a huge conversation. For me, what I'd like it to be is that... In this engine management world, like the motorsport world that I'm involved with, most people are not up to speed on the electronics aspects at all. So there's a lot of people tuning cars and they know how to use a laptop, but a lot of them stem from being mechanics. So, and they're learning their craft on the electronic side of things. So for me, whether it is the way, but for me, the electronics it needs to go way more into an electronics knowledge background for people in motorsport. So using more data acquisition, more, torque management methods, different ways to manage the vehicle, the race car, because I see a lot of high-end teams, even here locally, that aren't using the power that's even currently available. So, there's still, I think the future is sort of almost what's still here at the moment. So, I mean, in terms of things like
using what's already here.
Yeah, using what's available, and like power distribution, as I've spoken about, that is a massive, powerful device that you can put in your race car, and a lot of people still see it as just a really fancy relay. So I think the future is certainly just more advanced use, people becoming more advanced with engine management, electronics in race cars, and actually using more powerful features that are currently available now. I think things like direct injection and that sort of stuff, sure, that's going to be more prevalent, and I think more in OEM levels. Definitely, and aftermarket or flash tuning and that type of thing. A lot of it's going to be direct injection. But I think at our motorsport level that I'm more involved in, it might be some time before that becomes very prevalent. I don't expect to see many pro mod drag cars running direct injection yet. I don't think.
Yeah, right.
Wrong. But there's a lot of cars. I go to the drag strip, and more than not are running carburetors. So the future in
what vibrators?
Is still
vibrators.
Yeah.
What?
So I mean, I don't think that it's developed. I don't think it's going at a rapid rate. So in 5 or 10 years, I don't think there's going to be something really crazy new. I'd like to think that I'm going to make something that's going to be a game changer and it will change the future of motorsport and where we're heading. But ultimately, I think it's just about educating people and people becoming more educated to use the technology that's already available. You can buy it now. You can log on and you can buy power distribution modules and crazy dashes which have got massive amounts of mathematic power. So, for me, that would be a device that I would love to have, a really powerful maths, box that you can program and be able to do all sorts of things with runtimes with your car, because that's ultimately, once you get into a control class with certain racing, there's not much more you can do hardware-wise. You're stuck with a particular engine, gearbox, or whatever. So ultimately, the electronics is going to be the answer, I think. And I don't think enough people are using at a high level. I don't think they are at all. And that's
you definitely just hit the nail on the head. It's not that there's new advancements. There's so much stuff that's going on right now that's incredibly capable, and we're just tipping the iceberg with even executing on and using the features that are currently existing. Like maybe we're drunk on the idea of new features when the features that we have in front of us are incredibly powerful already. We're not even using them to the level that we could be.
Put it in an example. I've used certain dashes in the past, like logging dashes and so forth, which you can program mass channels to do whatever you like. Now, it's as creative as you want to be. Now, you can that thing over to your engine management system or whatever, and you've got yourself massively powerful functions that don't even exist. And you can do that. You go and buy something now, you write a little bit of a program up, or do some maths, and you've got some massively powerful runtime that you can use in your race car. So, and most people don't even realise that. They see the dash, they see it's got pretty, gauges and it looks. And yes, you can download data and you've got the squiggly lines on your screen, but people aren't using the possibilities that are already available. And I think that that's the future for me, and where I'd like it to be is that let's just start getting people educated to use the current technology that's there, and I'll hopefully wear an arm of assisting people doing that and creating functions that bridge that gap a little bit.
So how do you find the time to do that versus the tick boxes that you have to do, and how much do you delegate and when do you not delegate it?
Well, I think...
how do you decide all those things?
Well, for me with functions, I'm a big fan of, the user function now. So we're developing user functions where you just say, okay, well, if if the status is true based on a certain number of inputs, yes, you can make something turn on or off, or you can pulse it. And then moving forward from that would be, some PID routines which allow you to, do a PID on any sort of feed forward runtime that you want. So for me, I think if we make some user functions very, very powerful and just let the user go away and do whatever they want, and that's my goal, as opposed to just keep making that tick box get bigger. Because sooner or later, you have this ECU with thousands of functions and tick boxes everywhere, and ultimately they may not do exactly what the user wants. So, to me, I think we need to just get the tick boxes done, and I think we've done most of the general overall tick box functions that need to be sort of sorted, and sure we'll need to refine them, but just advancing the user functionality more and just giving people more power to do what they want within the ECU.
Yeah.
That saves us a lot of work, because then, here you go, do it, knock yourself out, do it yourself.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like that's what Motec's doing with the M1.
100%. Now, they took it to a level, they took it to a massive level of where, it relies on a reasonably high level user to do it. I look and go, wow, that's awesome, that's cool.
They target a high level customer too.
Exactly. And I think what we're trying to achieve is somewhere in between you get your tick boxes and it does this, and Motec, where they're saying, look, you get your program and you can go nuts. And that's high end. And my dream goal is to sort of be able to be in a position to market a product that have that similar idea. Now, technically, it's easy.
Well, people's education levels are going to have to improve too, and like you said, like the ability to execute on these ideas. And so, as people and the industry moves forward, the adoption of those types of products is going to grow.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have the capability to back such a creative product of where people could write their own firmware as such and functions. Yes, we could create the back end to do that, but to be able to back that up and be able to support that network will be very, very difficult. Probably more difficult than it would be to support our whole ECU program as it stands, just at the support level. But to me, it's cool. Like, it's cool to see things that it can get to that level. It's actually, to think that the motorsport level, and they're targeting high end, but there's even mid-end motorsport that are seeing the benefit in going down that path. So, 10 years ago, there's no way that such a product could have been marketed, I don't think, at all.
Right. Scott, I've really enjoyed this conversation. We got to cut it loose or else this thing's going to go on forever. So tell us a little bit, or the last thing, tell us how we connect with you and your company.
Well, you can go to www.emtronaustralia.com. I'm available from email, but Scott, SCATT, at emtronaustralia.com and emtronaustralia.com.au. Usually my dealers are contact us via some other forms of social media as well. So if you jump on board and you're interested in becoming a dealer, then I also try to make myself available through other means as well.
Other means being Facebook?
Facebook, Skype, and that sort of thing. I don't like to frequent them, but they're very good. I found them very good tools of communication. Very easy to type a quick text message to someone, via Facebook, chat or Skype or Viber. Use Viber a little bit as well.
Okay. All right. Well, Scott, thanks so much, man. I appreciate all the information. We'll have to do it again, and maybe we'll tackle another topic, huh?
Thanks, Reed. And I think maybe we'll pick a topic and we'll smash it hard.
I like it. Let's do that.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thanks again, Scott.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the